build it, you can draw it, and then we can record it together. Okay, so for number 2, I'm going to start with 2 negative markers. The plus sign means to add. I'm going to add 3 negative markers. And the result is -5. Okay, and it looks like someone's drawn that in there. Great, thank you so much. Now, I'm assuming that you've done a couple of these and you can see that there's definitely a pattern here. What do you notice about the add-ins on this page? Okay. Do they have the same sign, different sign? Correct, they all have the same sign. So for example, in number 1, both add-ins are negative. Okay, in number 3, both add-ins are positive. Okay, so if the add-ins have the same sign, okay, is there some sort of rule that we can generalize to help us with figuring out what the sign of the result is going to be? And Pat, what would that be? Okay, it looks like someone typed it in. Basically, we're just going to add the integers and keep the sign. That is correct. Okay. Does anybody have a question regarding adding integers with the same sign? Happy face if you're ready to move on. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and look at the next set of problems. Actually, before we look at the next set of problems, I want to turn your attention to the Think Aloud script that I was using. This isn't part of your, this isn't in the teacher guide or in the student pages. It's something that I added, and I think it's a nice strategy or script to use when doing integer addition. It's setting up a nice routine for the kids to use the manipulative. So always stating what you start with. Stating what you start with, okay, what the operation sign means, okay, and then adding the second add-in, whether it's a positive or negative add-in, and then figuring out the results. Okay. We have a hand raised. Helen, did you have a question? Yes, if you are interested in this Think Aloud strategy, I will send you both the Think Aloud strategy or script for the addition of integers and for the for subtraction of integers. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next set of problems. All right. Now this is actually on the bottom half of SP2. Okay. And again, we're going to use that mantra: build, draw, record. Use the Think Aloud strategy to do number 9 together. Okay. So it says here, start with 2 negative markers. So on my workspace, I'm going to build, and Joe can highlight what's recorded there for you. So I'm going to start with 2 negative markers. Okay. The plus sign means to add. Okay, I'm going to add 3 positive markers. Okay. And the result is then going to be 1. Now in this case, you'll notice that we have some 0 pairs to take care of. Okay, and this idea of the 0 pairs should have been established earlier on in the lesson. And so the kids should be comfortable with knowing that a positive and a negative marker make a 0. Okay, so these 2 are neutral, these 2 are neutral or 0. And so what's left is 1. Okay, all right, looks like some of you guys are already starting on the other problems. Go ahead and take a few minutes to look at this set of problems and see if you can do a couple of them, and then we'll get back together and talk about it. All right, looking at this set of problems, What do you notice about the signs of the addends? Are they same or are they different? Okay, they are different, that is correct. So if they're different, okay, why is the sum always positive in these problems? Is there some sort of statement that we can use to generalize why this set of problems, the sum always happens to be positive? Okay, so Pat says that the largest absolute value is positive. Okay, that is correct. Okay, so for example, I noticed that the number with the larger absolute value happens to be positive. Or another way to say that would be just looking at the plus and minus markers, I noticed that there are more positive markers than negative markers. And that's probably what our students are going to say first, right? Just as Helen wrote in the chat box. Okay. All right, here you'll notice that you may have to introduce this vocabulary word absolute value and have a discussion about that. I didn't go over the warm-up page with you, but there is a warm-up page for this lesson that reviews some of the essential vocabulary words that are going to be needed for this lesson. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next page. All right, this is from SP3. Okay. Again, let's use that same mantra. I'm going to build, draw, and record. I'm going to do the building. Hopefully Joe will do the drawing and the recording for me. And I'm also going to use my think aloud script. So for number one, I'm going to start with 2 positive markers. Okay. The addition sign means to add, so I'm going to add 3 negative markers. Okay. I notice that there's some 0 pairs I need to take care of. And so what I'm left with is -1 for number 1. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and take a few minutes to do some of these problems, and then we'll get back together and discuss this set of problems. Helen, you are correct. We do have a discussion about the absolute value, I think in week 2, lesson 1, which is the introduction to integers lesson. Yes. So I guess the warm-up for this lesson will be a review then of some of those key vocabulary words that are going to be needed. All right, looking at this set of problems, what do you notice about the add-ins? Do they have the same sign or the different signs? Correct, they are different signs, okay? Now, they're different, but why is the sum always negative in this set of problems? And again, how would our students phrase it? Okay, so Susan says that the negative number is larger. Okay, is there another way we can say that so that it's a little bit more mathematically precise? So it's not really that the negative number is larger. There are more negative markers, correct? Okay, and if we want to follow the rule that came up earlier, we can talk about how the larger absolute value, the number with the larger absolute value happens to be negative. Okay. All right, is there any questions about this set of problems? All right, then let's go ahead and move on to our next page. In your packet, you'll notice that SP4 is different. Okay. Here, top of SP4, we want students to just look at the problem and without computing, determine whether the sum is going to be positive, negative, or 0. So they have to kind of look back to the previous pages and think about the rules that they generalize for sums with addends of the same sign and sums with addends of different signs. Okay. And we're not going to go through these because it's pretty self-explanatory, but I did want to point out that that's what SP4 is about. On the bottom of SP4, you'll see some more practice problems. Okay. And then this last set of problems where it's numbered 1 through 3, which is really not 1 through 3, my computer just renumbered it for me. But these problems, you'll notice that the numbers are a lot larger. So the students really can't rely on their manipulatives. Again, they have to think back to some of those rules that we generalized in the previous pages and be able to apply them to larger numbers. Okay. Do you have any questions about integer addition? Okay. All right, then let's go ahead and move on to subtraction of integers. All right. Now, for subtraction of integers, there's a few vocabulary words that we want to introduce. Minuend, subtrahend, and difference. The reason why we introduce these words is because later on when we generalize rules about integer subtraction, it makes it a lot easier to use these vocabulary words. If you are uncomfortable using the vocabulary words that are here, you can always say, for example, for the minuend, you can say the number we're subtracting from. Subtrahend would be the number that we're subtracting, and then obviously the difference is the result. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this set of problems. Number 1 says 3 minus 1 equals 2. Helen, did you have a question? I don't know. I'm going to throw that out to you guys. I'm not comfortable saying the first number and the second number. It's not as clear to me what that is. So I prefer saying minuend as the number that we're subtracting from, the subtrahend as the number that we're subtracting, and then again using difference as the result. I personally think that saying first number and second number can be a little bit confusing. Okay. All right, so looking at number 1, we have 3 minus 1 equals 2. Okay, I'm going to do the building. Joe will draw and record for me, okay, and I'm going to use a similar script to what we use for addition of integers. So I'm going to start with 3 positive markers. Okay. The minus sign tells me I need to subtract, so I'm going to take away 1, okay, which leaves me with 2 positive markers. So the result is 2. Okay. All right, so go ahead and take a few minutes to do some of the other problems on this page, and then we'll get together and have a discussion about it. All right, so looking at this set of problems, subtraction problems, I noticed that the sign of the minuend and the subtrahend are the same. So for example, okay, I have minuend 3 and subtrahend 1, which are both positive. Okay, in number 3, negative 4, negative 2, the minuend and the subtrahend have the exact same sign. Okay, so when the signs are the same, okay, did we need to add any 0 pairs? Right, we don't need any 0 pairs at this point. Okay. Now before I move on, there's a really good question here. Mr. Diaz brought up a really good point. He says that crossing out the negatives look like positive. I think that's a very valid point. One way to get around that is to actually do what's done on number 3. Do you see how someone circles the negative 2 that they were subtracting and then put a line through it? I think that's a better idea than to just cross out the negative sign. So thank you for bringing that point up. Okay. All right, so here we notice that the minuend and the subtrahend have the same sign, so there was no need for 0 pairs, and that is summarized on the next page here, SP5. Actually, it's the same exact page as the previous page. I just couldn't fit everything on one page. Okay. So again, the minuend and the subtrahend have the same sign. Okay. We didn't need any 0 pairs, right? And the reason why we didn't need any 0 pairs is because the absolute value of the minuend is greater or less than the absolute value of the subtrahend. Right, it's greater. There's no need for me to build any zero pairs. I have enough in my subtrahend to subtract. I'm sorry, in my minuend to subtract. Okay, and that's kind of the idea for this set of problems. Okay. Now for me, using the vocabulary word minuend, subtrahend, absolute value, it makes it easier for me to generalize that rule that we just came up with. I'm not sure if it would be clear if we said, the absolute value of the number we're subtracting from is greater than the absolute number of the number that we're subtracting. I think that gets a little bit too confusing for the kids. So in this case, introducing the vocabulary words and using it in this context is going to be useful for the students. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next page. Okay. All right, so this set of problems, okay, I noticed that I'm going to need some zero pairs. Okay. I start with 2 negative markers. I'm going to build it. I'm going to start with 2 negative markers. And it tells me I need to subtract 5 negative markers. Well, I don't have 5 negative markers to take away. I only have 2 negative markers. So I'm going to have to build some zero pairs so that I can subtract more negative markers, so that I can get more negative markers to subtract. Right? So I'm going to build some zero pairs. And I notice at this point I have enough negative markers to subtract. So it says here subtract 5 negative markers. Well, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 negative markers. And what I'm left with is 3 positive markers. Okay. Now I added an additional zero pair. And I think students might do that in the beginning because they're not really sure how many zero pairs they're going to need. And that's okay. I think if students get more practice, they'll realize they'll be more efficient in building their zero pairs. Okay? It doesn't change the results. We still have 3 positive markers for a result of 3. Okay. All right, so take some time to do a couple of these problems. Maybe do number 12 and number 13, and then we'll talk about these. All right, looking at this set of problems, we notice that the minuend and the subtrahend have the same sign, okay? But this time, the absolute value of the subtrahend is greater than the minuend. Or the minuend, the absolute value of the minuend is less than the absolute value of the subtrahend. Okay? So in this case, we definitely have to build zero pairs. Okay? And can someone explain why we need the zero pairs here? Well, I guess we kind of did because, again, we don't have enough in the minuend to subtract the subtrahend. So we need to build zero pairs in order to do that. Okay? All right. Any questions? Right, because you are taking away more than you have exactly. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next page. Okay. I think this is the bottom of SP6. Okay, it's another set of problems. And here, I noticed that the signs are different. Okay, the minuend and the subtrahend have different signs. Okay, so again, if I'm building it, I'm going to start with 5 negative markers. Okay, and I'm going to subtract, take away 2 positive markers. Okay, now here I notice that I don't have any positive markers to take away. So I'm going to have to build some zero pairs. Okay. If again, the kids are going to be inefficient, so I'm going to build more zero pairs than I need. Okay. And now it seems like I have some positive markers to take away. And so in problem number 1, it says to take away 2 positive markers. I'm going to take away my 2 positive markers. There are some zero pairs I need to take care of. Okay, and what I'm left with is -7, 7 negative markers. Okay. All right, go ahead and take some time to do a couple of these problems. All right, so for number 20 through 25, we noticed that the minuend and the subtrahend have different signs. Helen, did you have a question? Helen, is there a comment that you wanted to make? Okay. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. What do you mean by 10 more seconds? Okay, I'm not sure what you mean, so I'm going to move on. So again, we have different signs here. And again, we notice that, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead and take a couple more seconds to do the rest of the problem. All right. So again, it's obvious we needed zero pairs here, okay? And similar to the previous set of problems, okay, they have different signs, okay? But this time, we had to create enough zero pairs to represent the entire subtrahend, right? Because they're different signs, I don't have any from any of the negative or positive markers to take away from my minuend. Okay. Does everyone see the difference between the 3 different sets of problems that we introduced to the students? Okay, give me a happy face if you see kind of how the 3 different sets are laid out, right? Okay, and what we're trying to do is help the students generalize some rules by looking at similar problems. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next page. This is from week 3, SP7. Okay. Now on this page, we want the students to see the connection between addition and subtraction of integers. So look at 1A and 1B. Okay. And then take a couple moments to do maybe 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. Let's go ahead and do those together. Okay, I know we're moving really fast through the lesson, but again, we just want to kind of give you a sense of what the lesson's about. Obviously, you would do this a lot slower with your own students. What you should notice on this page, or what the students should notice, is that looking at the 2 problems in each of the columns, for example, 1A and 1B, they should see that subtracting a number, for example, subtracting -1, is going to give you the same result as adding its opposite, which is +1. Okay, and so be sure that the kids see that connection between subtracting a number and adding its opposite. Okay, that it's going to give you the same result. Okay. Are there any other comments, Helen or Joe, that you'd like to make to the group regarding this page or this lesson? All right. Looks like all good. All right, good. And let's see, there's one other page that I wanted to share with you. This is actually a math background from the teacher guide. It's TP4, week 3. And it gives you some information about how the minus sign is interpreted. We don't have very much time today, but this is definitely a page that you want to look at. maybe not something that you want to share with your students, but definitely something that I think is useful information for teachers. So please be sure to look at that in your teacher guide. Joe, did you have a question or comment? Yes, that would be great. If you are interested in the Think Aloud strategy or the Think Aloud script that was added to this presentation, please let us know and I'll have Joe actually send that to you. Oh, you should have gotten a pop-up window that says, do you wish to save it now? And if you save it, you'll have that Think Aloud strategy or script you can use. Okay. Helen, did you have a comment or a question? Okay. All right, so go back one page. This is a visual way to show why subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. Okay, great. Okay. Again, very useful for the kids to understand and see that subtracting a number is the same as adding an opposite. Okay, teachers usually give that rule exactly. And here we want to set up a pattern where they can actually generalize a rule for themselves. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, Helen. Okay. Well, I think that's it. That's the end of the presentation for lesson 3.1. Our next session is going to be September 22nd, and the topic will be integer multiplication and division. If you would like to if you'd like to stay on afterwards, feel free to hang around because we're going to be around for a little bit. And if you have any feedback or you need verification of attendance, you can email me and I'll send you a verification notice. Thank you, and I hope to see you next week. Yes, we were very happy to see UCLA beat Tennessee this past weekend. But did you hear about our quarterback? I think he's going to be out for the next 3-4 weeks. Very unfortunate news. Yes, yeah, we were just told that. Actually,